what we've done during this week, and then I want to discuss. I want to continue the discussion that we had left off on Monday. So again, what we are developing towards is a demo. When I say demo, I mean that we'll be building code, we'll be writing code, and hitting a development milestone rather than a demo milestone. That is, the code that we write will not be prototype quality. Will be as close to production quality as we can do without actually going to production. We'll have tests in place. We'll have end-to-end tests in place, functional tests in place, unit tests. And when we show a feature, we want to have finished it thoroughly, which means taking care of edge cases and just overall ensuring that quality is high. And the first demo is going to be a simple bucket creation and bucket provisioning demo, where we create a bucket and through Cozy, and then create credentials for that bucket again through Cozy, and then provide the bucket information and the credential information to a pod or an application that requests it. It's a very simple and straightforward use case, and that's what we're working towards. So the tasks I've shown here in green are tasks that have been addressed. I don't say completed, I rather say addressed, because as we discuss more, there are changes that are being brought in. Now, during this week, we focused more or less on integration efforts. And I would like Srini, who's been working on a part of the integration, and also if Tejas is on the call, I would like him also to give an update on what they've been working on. So Srini, if you're here.
Yeah, for now, for the last couple of weeks, I've been working on getting the CI up and running, and then some unit testing for the bucket request and bucket access request. Basically, mostly on the create calls. I'm ready to push a couple of PRs in that area. So trying to move as much of code as possible into the official repo. So.
Yeah, for those of you who are new here, I noticed a few new names. We've been, until the repositories for Cozy were created in the Kubernetes SIGs org, we created an org ourselves on GitHub just to start writing code and start collaborating. Right now, we're in the process of moving bits and pieces of that code into the official repo. So Srini, one thing is we have Nicholas here who is interested in contributing. Please tag him or please tag them in the PR as well. That way they can see what progress is being made.
Absolutely, yeah. We definitely need reviews on the PRs that are coming into the official repo. So that would be awesome.
Awesome. And Tejas, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. So
update? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been working on customized template to set up Cozy. I have a PR open. There's some feedback from you, Sid, on that, and I'm waiting for review from a couple other folks on it as well.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And Sajjan, you've been working on the sample provisioner, correct?
Yeah, I've been working on a sample provisioner. I haven't started moving code yet. I still think Rob is waiting. I don't know why. I would love to communicate with him, and then I can start moving my code.
Okay. Yeah, please tag me in the PR. Rob is going to be busy this week, so I can help push it through, assuming it's in good quality.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And is Krish on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Krish, did you get a chance to look into the CSI driver?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just working on starting to move stuff over. I'll have some PRs open soon.
Okay, sounds good. So Like I was saying earlier, most of the work has been around integration. So we've got customized work being done. We've got CI set up, the prow jobs and end-to-end tests being worked on. And we're going to continue this until we have the boilerplate in place. That is stuff like the CI, the set of tests for what you already have in place, so that we can speed up development once that is in place. All right, now I'm going to go into the next part of the meeting, which is discussing what we were discussing last week. But before I get started, so Nicholas, I will. There are a few changes I want to bring in. One is I want to start tracking development tasks on GitHub itself, so it'll be easier for people to pick up tasks and assign it to themselves and start working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that'll be an easy way to get started.
Yep.
All right, so getting into this, so Andrew, I know you haven't been here for a few weeks, so I'll give you a quick update, and for whoever else hasn't been here for the last few weeks, I'll give you a quick update on the last conversation that's been going on for the last few weeks. So one of the concerns that we brought up a few weeks ago was the way the protocol field is structured inside a bucket class, and a bucket is such that we have protocols hard-coded in it. So for instance, we have, in this case, I'm just showing the name and version, but if I were to pull up the cap, which I'll do right now, Kubernetes Enhancements. It looks a little different. I mean, it doesn't look a little different. It's much more flushed out. And bucket. There it is. Okay, so what is this object? Yeah, so this is what it looks like. So we have the protocol field defined like this. We have the name, which is the name of the protocol, like S3 or GS or Azure. We have the version of the protocol. So this would be, in case of S3, the version looks like what I have here. Each protocol follows their own versioning standard. And then we have the individual protocol types. So we have a substructure for S3, for Google, and Azure. Now, the first question you might ask is, we have a predefined set of protocols. How do we support new protocols? Second is, how do we go about expanding this itself? If within a protocol, we might end up adding new fields, new features. So that's where the discussion has been for the last few weeks. What is the process going to look like for someone who wants to add new protocols? And what is the process going to look like for someone who wants to add fields into a particular protocol? And the reason this is an important question is because we have multiple vendors that support single protocols, especially S3. There are a lot of object storage vendors that support S3. And we need to have a clear governance model such that we're fair and just and clear with everyone that wants to contribute for their particular protocol. So the first question that we were dealing with was how do we allow new protocols to become a part of Cozy? Again, the reason this is important, the new protocol is important, is because if we don't address this now, the process for a particular provider to add themselves would be a year or a year and a half long process, where they'd have to first petition, get the fields into protocol, and then go through the API review, and then wait 3 versions of Kubernetes for it to become stable. So Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, if I can interrupt you here. So obviously I understand the concern on this side. Let me push back on the other side a little bit, because part of the whole reason we're doing this is portability, right? Is to basically say, look, I can write to an S3 and then my application doesn't in any way have to change whether I'm running on AWS or whether I'm running on-prem and I've got an enterprise object storage that has an S3 interface to it. And what I get concerned about when we start talking about adding protocols or adding additional fields is breaking that contract. And instead, it becomes more of a, hey, I've got 10 different implementations of S3. Yep. Each of them have a slightly different set of parameters or something. And it gets to the point where, particularly since the stuff we're talking about here is the interface with the application. It's not the interface with the provision, because the interface with the provision already has an open, flexible thing there, right? What you're suggesting is that if I, as an application, am writing to a brand new object storage, then yes, there is an integration to get that brand new object storage protocol into here. Right. We can argue about how onerous that should be, but what I want to make sure is that we're not in a position where kind of every object vendor creates a circumstance where apps are written to their specific thing, and then this whole value proposition kind of gets torn down.
Absolutely, we're on the same page with that. I mean, a more tangible way also would be to explain that would be this protocol structure is what is going inside a pod. That's the descriptor for an application to get information about the bucket. So if we don't keep this stable, if we allow arbitrary fields or allow individual vendors for the same protocol to define it themselves, we'll end up in a position where each vendor will have their own S3 standard rather than S3 standard. So yeah, Andrew, we're on the same page with that. Now, the question is really, should we even think about or worry about what the process is going to look like for adding a new protocol?
I think that's a fair question. Let's posit that maybe at some point in the future we have a vendor neutral object protocol that we decide as CNCF or somebody that we want to have something that might be based off of S3 or something, but not under Amazon control, under standard control.
Say even Swift.
Yeah, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I don't want to put a position on it at this point, but sure, in that case, there would be a strong argument for adding that protocol into here. And so the question then is, okay, what would that take? Obviously, we'd want it to be backward compatible, so you wouldn't want to have to break support for existing protocols to add a new one. But the existing mechanism certainly supports that. So it seems like the main issue would be that in order to add support for that protocol, you're going to have to change sort of fundamental parts of Cozy itself, right? You're going to have to add that into all the places where different protocols are sort of passed through. So, I mean, you're right now in the code that's dealing with that. Is it your sense that that is going to be a terribly onerous thing to add a brand new protocol?
Technically, no, not at all. We just have to pass it along. We're not doing even validation on them. I mean, type checking is done. That's as best as it does.
But there's some interface to the pod, we say, right?
Yeah, but we're just passing it through.
Right. You just have a structure, and you know that there are 4 fields, and boom. You
Yeah.
pass those fields along.
But the point about a protocol is that it might require some structure in the pod, right? That's the point
Right.
of having different protocols.
Right. The type itself is well defined as as a ghost struct rather than just a map string.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is you don't create a new protocol without having clients that are already writing to that protocol, without having a well understood set of bootstrap information you need, endpoint information or whatever. So at that point, all of that stuff, you have depending on how new the protocol is, you might have a little back and forth on what is the actual set of parameters you need. But it strikes me at the end of the day, it's pretty straightforward at that point. You just say, boom, add these fields, have a new thing you learn how to pass through, and that's kind of it. So I guess I'm not really sure I understand
The problem.
what the argument is. What's the problem with this?
I don't think there's a problem. I just think it's worth talking about once.
But let me just make it more difficult to discuss. Let's say that the new protocol has its own, networking, high performance networking to set up for the pod to connect, right? Whether it's either user space or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But imagine that a protocol really comes with some stack under it, and not just RESTful HTTP, which might be very simple, right? Because that's how all of these protocols today are built, right? But then if we have a new path in the node adapter to do things which are more, looking more to have more permissions on the node or whatever, right? Handling
Hey,
more
your
of
voice cut out for a second. Maybe it was just me, but I didn't hear the last part.
Can you hear me now? Am I clear?
Yeah.
You did not cut out. I think it was on Sid's end.
Yeah, it was me. It's my bad.
Anyway, I think I made just the small point. I mean, just saying that the protocol might be different than what we're using now, and we might require more from Cozy in order to to inject it into a pod, right?
I completely agree that is a possibility. And so what I will say is that this design does not accommodate that.
Wait, hold on.
And so to accommodate something fundamental like a completely different network, and where you might have to do work that is really outside of what these components are doing today, I think, that becomes one of those where you take a fresh look and say, maybe I need a new set of abstractions. But I don't think you can build those abstractions now unless you've really got a candidate case for it.
Right.
Fair enough.
Hey, that's an interesting point, Guy. Andrew, I've got a question for you. I think the process is fairly straightforward if your example, a CNCF of standardized S3 compatible protocol comes through. But what about incubation phases of that? Can Cozy still be used by the vendor or the group trying to experiment with a new protocol, or is Cozy not usable in that situation?
I think it's a fair question, and what I would say is, I think at this point there's kind of a lot of experience with the sort of block and file and the tension of going off into very specific stuff versus portable stuff, and so I don't have the answer to your question, but what I would say is I just have a gut feeling that we've probably got some collective wisdom about that already. Like maybe there is a way to, the problem is just that without making, without pulling protocol handling completely out of Cozy, I'm not sure how you do that. Right? Like I want to try something brand new. I mean, what I could do is just take my own Cozy code, maybe, and provide my own controllers and stuff like that. But in terms of, I want to offer a prototype of my brand new thing that isn't supported yet by Cozy.
We could have a generic protocol. Just a thought out there. I'm not advocating for it, but that would help you incubate and try out Cozy without having to adhere to any of these Azure S3 or GCS.
Yeah, what I just worry is anytime I've seen one of those kinds of things, it turns into a vehicle for people to do non-compliant end arounds the portability, right? I mean,
I agree. Yeah.
So the proposal I made to solve this problem is if I want to develop an entirely new product and prototype it in Cozy, what you do is you implement your proprietary protocol and S3 at the same time, and then you implement the S3 part in Cozy so you can use the lifecycle management, et cetera, but the actual pods connect with a different protocol that you just happen to know works because it's your prototype, right? So like typically every object storage implementation in the world, whatever they support, they also support S3 just as a sort of backwards compatibility thing.
As of now, yeah.
And you can do that here, right? You can implement a Cozy driver and say, yeah, I support S3, but I also support my fancy new protocol. And then I'll, ship that and people can use the fancy protocol instead of S3 if they want.
Yeah, the problem is that the endpoint information, if it's different than what you need for S3.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they would have to get it out of band, but that's true.
Oh,
right?
fair enough. Yeah.
So what's the advantage of keeping that thing if it's you already have this S3 compatible? Why do you still need this other fancy protocol? What's the advantage?
Because S3 is pretty limited in what it can do, right? I mean, like that's the $64,000 question. Why do people keep reinventing S3? But they do because presumably there's very good reasons to do so.
Well, the main reason is, we want most vendors want to pull data out of Amazon, and the easiest way to allow workloads to move between clouds is for the new cloud or the new, infrastructure to support the S3 protocol. So applications need not change at all. I mean, coming from MinIO, this is kind of how we bring customers. Where the expenses in Amazon becomes very expensive, and they want to move, and MinIO supports S3 natively, so they don't have to change their applications at all. They just have to move their data, and they're good to go.
Yeah, the assumption that all the other vendors have something S3 compatible, given the recent news, may change as well because of the consistency thing. Starting a couple of days ago, being S3 compatible puts a lot of burden on the system as a whole, which was not there before. So I bet there will be vendors that have something that is somewhat S3 compatible, but not fully.
Yeah, that has always been my concern about S3 being an Amazon or standard, because they can advance that along the way and leave all the compatible quote in the dust.
Exactly.
I do want to a little bit, though, bifurcate between Cozy and this question of S3 compatibility, because I am interested in, once we get Cozy down, talking about a standard that we could as a community control for this.
I only threw out S3 as like, if you want to develop a prototype Cozy driver, you don't need to have some generic protocol type, because everyone can just do S3, and it's a way to sort of get your foot in the door and get started, and then work on the real protocol you want to support in parallel.
I mean, given that most of the data is on S3 compatible storage, S3 is going to be the dominant one for a while, but it's going to change regardless at some point. And we want to be relevant for a long time.
Yeah, I think what Andrew was saying, I really liked, which was, if you want to experiment with something, you can kind of do it out of band and create your own custom fork of Cozy as a prototype. And when you're ready to go further beyond a prototype, then, we're talking about effectively introducing a new feature into Kubernetes. And you can go through the alpha, beta, GA processes to introduce a new protocol like any other feature. We went through this with the initial set of in-tree volume drivers. And so it's a well-trodden path.
Yeah, I would like to.
I wasn't arguing against that. What I'm just offering like another step along the path from complete out of tree prototype to completely integrated.
Right. Makes
You know,
sense.
Yeah, I would also though like to point out that where we draw the line here is an interesting one. We are intentionally making it easy for different implementations to come in and integrate in a CSI type way. But that's not what we're talking about here. Here we're talking about the equivalent of POSIX file semantics versus say NT file semantics or something like that. I mean, it's a pretty fundamental difference.
I think it's volume mode. I think, Ben, you described it as like adding a new volume mode, right?
Yeah.
And the one that you noted about like POSIX things, and maybe that's flavors and more about capabilities of file protocols, right? Which is something maybe we also somehow need to import from CSI.
Not file protocols. I think he means S3 itself is equivalent to POSIX, and GS is
the various object protocols are analogous to volume modes in that there is a small fixed number of them that would only change, under very significant circumstances.
And the clients need to recognize these.
And the client unavoidably has to know what it's dealing with.
Yeah.
But it's any file system volume plugin should more or less work interchangeably, with maybe some quirks. But as long as you stick to basic, read, write, open, list dir kind of file semantics, you're going to be fine.
But this is exactly the boundaries of capabilities, right? So distributed locking. There's whatever. Like file system has added a lot of optional features as well.
Yes, and if you rely on them, you lose portability. But that's not Kubernetes' problem.
Yeah.
So how does CSI handle that differences in capabilities of the volume? Is that only between volume modes?
So you can get a block volume, you can get a file system volume, and what that means is fairly nebulous, but it's kind of well understood that, block volumes you can read and write blocks to them. Maybe you can do SCSI ioctls, maybe you can't, but the basic read write block stuff is expected to work everywhere. Same with files, you can create and delete and read and write files, but like whether you can do locking or whether you can do some other things, it's sort of less clear.
So you can't specify as a workload more fine-grained capabilities of a block volume or a file system volume.
I guess you could, using like the generic parameters.
The way you would do it would be out of band. The administrator, you'd go to your administrator and say, I need volumes that support file locking, and you'd be like, okay, our regular storage class can't do that, but I'm going to give you another storage class that I promise you can do that, and as long as you use that storage class, you'll be fine. Yeah. And then with that out of band agreement between you and the administrator, you can be ensured that your workload will always get volumes that support locking.
Right. But it's not part of CSI, and it's not automated in between the workload and the admin policies, right?
Right.
I see. So in essence, I think that's the same problem of S3 compatibility having like, checks and misses with different providers, and even like complete semantics sometimes, right?
Yeah, which is why, I'll point out, I do believe there is a place for a discussion about standardizing on something that we can then provide testing and compliance against. But I think that doesn't need to happen in the context of this at this point.
Wait, can you elaborate on that? What do you mean?
Okay, so once we get this cozy here, right, this provides immediate value. Mm-hmm. But it does not solve truly a portable object, right? I mean, it still has a kind of an implicit contract that isn't explicit between the workload and the underlying storage.
Yeah.
And if, for example, the workload tickles some brand new feature of S3 that all of the non-S3 but compliant vendors don't yet support, then that doesn't work. So the way to avoid that is to have a standard protocol that is evolved alongside this, that has formal compliance and everything else against it. And then that could be added as another protocol here, and then that gives you a much stronger portability guarantee at the application layer. But I just didn't want to conflate that activity with this, because I see this control plane stuff as a prerequisite to getting data plane portability.
So some of those standards between quotes already exist, and somehow they are not part of the default set of protocols that has been defined as part of the spec. That says something.
Okay, can you give us more information? Like, give us an example of that.
In Swift.
Someone mentioned Swift. There is the SNIA CDMI spec. There's been others before as well.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little maybe heretical here and suggest that you're not going to be able to push users away from what they're probably doing, and that what you're probably going to have to do as a standard is in fact take a subset of S3 that's sufficiently large a subset that it'll match a large percentage of the applications that are currently out there, so that a bunch of applications can just switch to saying they depend on that, and then they have a more stable platform against. Changing to a completely different object protocol that isn't, I mean, I think that is also of value, but I don't know what the actual usage of those protocols is. But once they get to any particular level of usage, then I absolutely think we should include them.
Andrew, I really like that proposal, because I was trying to figure out how to word something like that, and you did it better than I could have. But yes, trying to invent an entirely new standard is a doomed idea, but taking a subset of S3 and calling that a new standard could definitely win.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, you could do. Please finish your thought.
I think I finished mine.
All right, great. Okay. Yeah. How do we go about doing this? Do we first release what we've got with this S3, and then how do we go about standardizing that subset?
Yes, that is my proposal, is that we move forward on this, because this framework works whether that second standard protocol exists or not, right? And it provides value immediately, especially if people don't depend on things in their applications that differ from vendor to vendor, right? And then we also have a couple of protocols here that have sizable usage that are single vendor. So this has value right off the bat, can be baking. I think that the protocol standardization effort on, say, a theoretical S3 subset, it can be a completely separate effort, and it might involve different people, and likely involves some corporate level activity as well, because you're going to have to sign up to things like that. But I just think we should do this serially. We should do this and then also think about the S3 standard later. That's all. Because if we could totally sidetrack ourselves off and argue about that and not get this done.
Right, yeah. Okay, all right. I think we have a good path ahead with this. Does anyone have any questions? So someone mentioned Swift and another protocol that I have not heard of. From what I understand, so Swift is currently supported by Ceph, but Ceph moved forward from Swift and moved on to supporting S3. It has an S3 gateway, which came after Swift support. And I am quite sure on this, OpenStack deployments are definitely being outcompeted right now by Kubernetes in terms of growth, in terms of new deployments. And
I think IBM has it.
So from experience, don't think of Swift as part of OpenStack. It can be part of OpenStack, but we have customers who run Swift, but no OpenStack.
So from what I understand, again, I might be wrong about this, but Swift is a part of OpenStack, right? Like, maybe not anymore, but isn't that how it came about?
Yes, but you can deploy it fully independent from the VM stuff, etc., that comes with OpenStack as well.
Got it.
Is there a very specific proposal to add a Swift protocol head here? Is that what the concern is?
No, I'm questioning if that's even needed or not. Swift used to be quite popular, and I don't know what the case is anymore. So that's why I'm asking.
So I think it wouldn't be unrealistic for us to talk about a kind of degree of footprint that would say, yes, at this point, it makes sense to add a protocol head, right? That might be worth stating as just sort of a policy statement, and we probably can't come to it in this meeting, but you know, to say, hey, you know, once you have a certain number of clients and you want to propose that your protocol be included, then, you know, then it's worth doing that, right? As opposed to, and so, you know, your argument that, well, maybe Swift isn't really used anymore, we should just get some kind of industry information on that and then set kind of a line and say anything that's above that line is a candidate.
All right, let's set that line then.
Yeah, I'm just, without seeing the data, it's going to be difficult to draw the line, right? Because what I'm going to guess is there's a clump, there's S3, which is going to be a huge spike, and then there's going to be a clump behind S3, and then there's going to be a long tail. And so seeing the data, we can figure out where the line should be between the long tail and the clump. That's all.
That makes sense. I believe last week or on Monday even, we were trying to figure out we were trying to find out how would we even go about drawing the line. I mean, at a high level, what you're saying makes sense, but a question that comes up is, again, should we even, okay, so there are two ways we can approach this. We can consider Swift as a brand new protocol or a proposal for a brand new protocol, understand how we, you know, make the decision, like what kind of information that we use, and just get a sense for how we can add it. And then maybe based on that, we can start drawing that line for other new protocols. So maybe it's information from the industry, but like what kind of information would that be?
Right, I was thinking literally some numbers on market share or you know, number of applications or something like that. They did a quick check and I can't find anything obvious, but I'm sure that there are a number of those analysis organizations that have gathered this information. So it's available. I just don't have it at my.
I mean, I'm sure I can find OpenStack Swift versus S3. There it is. All right, so you know, I don't think this is definitive or conclusive, but yeah, this is what it looks like.
Yeah, you can't use something like StackShare because enterprises.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. This is not conclusive. This is not something you can rely on.
Don't use that.
Yeah, definitely not. I agree. I don't think market share itself is a good enough representation, to be honest, because something could be on the rise. Something could be, you know, just early on, but you know, it might be very clear that it's growing. So yeah, I think that's one measure. Is there anything else we can think about?
Well,
Go
ahead.
How about just looking also on available open source? So if you have images which are open source that are clients of the protocol, right?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of they might get stale and die at some point, but they're also like their existence just means something. Maybe pools of these, I don't know, but
yeah, you're just talking about community around that protocol.
I mean, yeah, how many clients can we actually find that support it?
Mm-hmm. How do we go about measuring that? Even that's going to be a hard thing to measure.
I mean, maybe we just need to collect, like manually collect by, you know, people looking up what kind of applications used Swift, and then look up their polls.
Let me ask this to maybe Saad. Saad, I know there are a lot of vendors in CSI, and I know some of them, some of them even went out of business. How did you go about deciding if a new vendor could add themselves as an API into Kubernetes?
Yeah, for the entry, we didn't really have a bar. We said anybody who wanted to come in could join, because effectively we were trying to do what CSI did, which was be interoperable with as many different third-party block and file storage systems as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no bar, and we did end up with a set of abandoned in-tree plugins, which we're having to deal with now. So I like, given that with Cozy, we have the Cozy interface to allow arbitrary plugins for the data path. We don't have to be as permissive, and we can be a little bit more strict. And I like this idea of kind of having a bar that you have to meet before we add a new data path. It has to have a certain amount of kind of usage before we consider adding it, because there is overhead in maintaining it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one way we could define that is rather than even a set of numbers or set of minimum threshold. Now we could even say it's going to be decided on a case-by-case basis by a committee. I mean, us, everyone here. I think that's fair too. Because right now, I don't know if there's a single measure or a set of measures that that would be good enough for figuring this out.
Right. So I think there's a heuristic, right? So the heuristic is obviously based on amount of usage, but heuristic doesn't have to be the sole arbiter. You could also overweight something by saying, look, this is an open standard as opposed to a vendor lock standard. Hey, this has open source clients against it. Hey, there are network effects. Maybe it's got other hooks into Kubernetes. I mean, all these things could raise the value prop on something enough that it crosses the bar. But I think you still need to kind of start with some kind of market share, because that, and by market share, I don't mean commercial market share. I mean number of clients that use.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So here's the thing. Let's say a new standard comes up and we let it in. That could be we would be providing the platform for it to get the high market share. Now, what I'm trying to say is maybe they didn't already have it, but by becoming a part of Cozy, they finally got get the visibility and reach to succeed in the industry.
I like your optimism.
No, you'd be surprised. Like with the cloud provider stuff, there were a lot of cloud providers that wanted to add themselves into Kubernetes, and they were all small hosting providers. They're trying to become legit by becoming a part of Kubernetes. So
right, but I guess I would just point out that Cozy doesn't exist yet. So the fact that people aren't using those providers isn't because of lack of support in Cozy.
As of right now, yeah. Yeah, I guess it's not something we need to think about yet.
One thing
I have a quick sorry.
If I may, one thing you could consider, although it comes with its own complications, is what the Cinder project does did within OpenStack, where every vendor needs to actually commit, and not commit as in code, but commit to support its plugin and have CI available, CI reporting back upstream and whatnot, such that you rule out vendors who are only in it to get their name somewhere in the Kubernetes code base and move on.
Yeah, I would just point out that this is the whole point about Cozy and even CSI is to vendor stuff isn't really in Cozy, right? We have a couple of protocols, but the actual drivers themselves are intentionally outside the code base. And separately distributed by vendors. So that process should already unlock that. So getting a protocol head in here might be a vendor thing, but I suspect it's far more likely that it would be an open standard thing than a vendor thing moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's less likely vendor, more likely a standard. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah,
maybe we really don't need it, but I wanted to raise it just because. So now we're saying that adding protocol is not something we desire, right? We want less protocols eventually. But to begin with, do we? So are we saying that these are the only options for object, because there's also an option just to use HTTP to get access to object stores? So my question is, do we want to provide like a very bare minimum
escape hat
kind of protocol, like say HTTP perhaps would be
like that?
like the bare, sorry?
Like that? Like a generic? Like you're calling
generic,
this yeah.
Generic what is, you mean this is an extension of, you mean the SAGE S3 and then specify that it's not really S3, you mean?
No, this is
no, I didn't mean this.
It's another one, like S3, it's bare minimum HTTP type thing.
Oh, yeah, that's
yeah,
what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's what crossed my mind.
Andrew made a point saying that this would work technically, but then in practice, and I've seen this too, people end up using this to we lose the portability that we've been working towards all along, because people start using this in ways to escape the standard, and in the long run, you'll have too many different implementations that use generic and lose out on the standardization that we provide. This is still possible. It's just, should we do it? I think Andrew had something to say.
Yeah. I guess I was going to say two things. One is exactly that point, which is now saying that you rely on generic doesn't actually mean that a particular driver will satisfy that, because you've got no idea, whether it would satisfy or not. So you kill portability. But the second thing I would say is, I just don't think in general it's a good idea to try to build abstractions in a vacuum. If you've got a specific protocol that you're trying to support, we should consider that protocol. And maybe there is a generic HTTP object protocol. Well, we should look at that specifically. But
I would look at, like, think about just a web, any kind of web interface, web access, meaning I curl something, or right. That's kind of the thought process behind it, that if I want to provision something simpler, if I want to provision something, a bucket which is simpler from that point of the access point of view, and I'm not really going to all of these things. And for files, this, if I get access to files, and then I can use all of my tools just the same. But for buckets, how do I? So I have to go to that. I wouldn't go in as far as generic. I would just look at it as a bare HTTP or something like that, or a basic like basic auth, basic HTTP. But if it's not something well defined enough for this, and we can certainly avoid it. That's.
Mm-hmm. They can still do that out of band. They wouldn't have to go through Cozy. If they're already basic, and they're really not going to get any benefit from Cozy, right?
I was thinking, like, think about it from point of view of entry point kind of protocol. Maybe not as a production grade thing, but yeah.
I see. Another thing is, we're not necessarily trying to reduce the list of protocols as much as trying to standardize this interface for applications for consuming object storage. And yeah, by keeping that standard well defined, and adding to that standard in a very structured process ensures that we can maintain that standard. We're really not against adding new protocols per se.
Yeah. So I think what I meant was something that is somehow defined by what curl can do. So that was my kind of my basic protocol.
Yeah, I just don't know what you're arguing that you're providing if it's a curl protocol. I mean, does bucket even make sense in that context? What's a provisioner to do, right?
Well, the provisioner is pluggable anyway, so that's kind of the.
Sure, but it's pluggable, but it's adhering to an interface. It's doing create bucket. It's doing, I mean, we have if you just look at the Cozy API and you ask how much of that is applicable to this bare bones situation in a way that is predictable and portable, I don't.
Why not? The data plane doesn't really say much about like how much I want to control the life cycle of my my buckets and my so the access might look a bit different, but I was suggesting basic auth. I don't know, maybe that's standard enough, but maybe not.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not sure. I think we have to support download credentials because that's the current state of the art, but I think we're kind of moving away from that in general anyway. It's just not a very secure, it doesn't support rotation, and then there's a bunch of issues. But I mean, at the end of the day, you have a secret that you mount in your pod, and then it goes and talks to, right? I mean, that's really kind of all you're talking about is replacing, right? Is replacing the secret that has your credentials and endpoint info.
We still have the service account based mechanism, and that's probably going to be the one that's going to win in the long run.
Yeah, that's my point. And I'm not sure how that applies to this generic or basic mode. That was my point.
So Guy, let me ask you this. So do you mean that like a simple driver that can be written for it in a very easy manner, without really much work, is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, so if we take down for a second, so right, these protocols like S3, Azure, and GCS, they were all created like for the extreme enterprise, application usage, of course, like the cloud applications and all that. But there's a bunch of ways where you can experiment with the entire lifecycle things, and with like maybe a bare bones data access as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just data sets that are public in some ways, and you're just referring to them or something, like not public, but
I mean, so
URLs.
People can technically do it, so they could just set it to say S3, provide dummy fields, and whatever special fields that they want to provide can be passed in through parameters.
True. Yeah. I mean, the only question was if it sounds like that the kind of a script, a shell script and a curl application or a job, right? If that's also a use case that we just want to be able to supply as a basic kind of access protocol. I don't know. For me, I like the idea, but it's not that I think that it's critical for
Yeah. So I think I understand now, because that does at least check one of my boxes, which is you can now articulate a very explicit thing, which is I'm curling against an existing public data set. There's no buckets there. It's just I need an endpoint, and it's a single endpoint, and I need credentials. What I would question is are there enough applications written to that to justify building into Cozy at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, there are risks to building it in because then it becomes this vehicle for corruption of the overall system. There's effort to bring it in.
Well, Andrew, you're describing a brownfield case, which is actually where Cozy is weakest, right? Like, because you can already address those brownfield cases outside of Cozy by just pointing your pod at the bucket and doing what you want to do with it. The value of Cozy is the greenfield case where you have some process for bucket lifecycle automation, and that doesn't fit this case that we're talking about here, where you're creating buckets and deleting buckets and, you know, in an automated way and using them.
Yeah.
Right. I guess the brownfield case is so I guess it comes down to what is it you're provisioning. In the brownfield case, where we have a clear understanding of a bucket, there is a namespace, there are objects within that namespace. We have an assumption of the overall model, and then there's access to get at that. And yes, the bucket may already exist and the objects may already exist or not, and you've got a data protocol to deal with that. What I'm asking really is, if we don't assume that, if we're not assuming a very specific S3 or GCS or whatever backend, and instead what we're saying is this is a website that has content that's curlable.
I would say, why are you using Cozy for that? Just
exactly.
point your pod at it.
Yeah. Okay. So then we're in agreement. Yeah.
Okay. So we're out of time. I think we can we have a conclusion on this particular discussion. I'll have to well on the Monday meeting it's going to be more about development. We'll continue talking about where we are in terms of development, and one last ask I have is to everyone here. It would you know, we're trying to get you know, as much as possible towards the demo done before the end of the year. And if all of you could help us, you know, accelerate that by code reviews or participating in writing code, contributing, it is welcome and very highly appreciated. Yeah, as we make new pull requests, I'll make sure they're posted in the SIG Storage Cozy channel. Please take some time to review them, leave your feedback so that we can move fast. That's my one ask.
I said some time ago, you guys were discussing whether to reduce the frequency of this meeting because there are like weekly stand-ups. And then I think at that time I was saying, oh, wait until the CAP is merged and then I'll talk about this again. So the CAP is merged now. So I don't know, it's up to you. I don't know, you guys want to.
I think there is still things to talk about. And as we flush things out, you know, we will figure, I think once the API is, you know, so this is what happened with the cloud provider thing. We did start thinking that we wouldn't need it, and for more than a year, there was enough content, enough things to discuss that it, you know, that it required the weekly meetings.
Okay,
so
that's no problem.
Yeah, I think we might slow down a little bit because, you know, the holidays are coming and people are winding down. But in the new year, we're going to start up again. So I think weekly is still good for now.
Okay, sure. Let's just keep it
there. Do you want us to remove any of the upcoming meetings over, I guess, the last couple weeks of the month?
I think you already did the 24th.
I did the 24th. That was Christmas. And then the following week is, I think, New Year's. And I wasn't sure if you wanted to cancel that one or not.
Oh,
so
definitely cancel that one too, because I believe, and the others we can play it by the year. We you know, we speak every week. So
yeah. Sounds good. All right. Will do.
Thank you. All right, that's it for now. Let's meet again Monday at 11 o'clock PST. And in the meantime, I'll add all the different tasks that we're doing, all the different things that need to be done into GitHub, and post a link on the Slack channel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, take care.
Take care.
Great, bye.
Bye. Bye.